Okay, so we're back to the Panhead project here at the shop. You guys have been seeing some videos on that project. We're doing some cool stuff on this tank. We're basically floating a 58 badge off of a 58 Panhead. We're floating that badge in epoxy on these holes. In our initial first deal, we figured out that these on this tank, we really like the shape of the tank for the project, but we figured out on this tank there's almost no it wasn't deep enough. So what we're doing is we've welded this steel around that tunnel, and we are going to basically build this tank up a little bit. So we're building it all the way up around that tank. And on the inside. And this is just going to be the first layer of Bondo. It'll take more than what I'm spreading on. I just don't want to get too much to have to work off and start getting our deal lined up here. Because this will all have to be built out to the tank so it all looks uniform. We're gonna have a lot of work cut out for us on this tank. But this bike is going to a show in Virginia. It's a kind of a prestigious show. The fellow that's building this bike that we're helping with, that's called Iron Attic Customs. I'm sure you can look him up on Instagram. We're Iron Blackbird Cycles, and we're helping him on this project. I'm sure we're going to have filler probably all the way out around this tank by the time we're done. This is just the first layer. And we'll get back to you when I start doing some shaping on this. Right at the moment, we're going to let this set up for about 5-10 minutes till I can start getting some shaping done with the shaping file for Bondo. We call them cheese grater. It's starting to tack up, so we'll be back in just a few minutes. Yeah, no, I'm probably overactivating this Bondo, but I like to work fast. And Never had any problems with a little bit of extra hardener in this stuff. We got our first build up done. I'm trying to build this up a little more now, so we can get over this metal ridge here. Put it on, take it off. That's basically the gist of it. Wonder how much Bondo has been wasted over the years, wound up on the floor. I guarantee you I put my share on the floor. Doing now is trying to push some of it up to this ridge to where I got a little more to work with, especially when I go to even all this around this tank. Many of you body guys love the smell of Bondo. Put a comment down there if you love the smell of Bondo. I'll build this up right here because I knew there was a shallow spot in that weld. It'll be easier to shape from the inside, so I don't mind to push it a little bit over the edge there into the inside of that. I want to make sure that we get a big enough layer of this on the outside to where I can really get to that ridge without having a big void and have to do another coat. I'm sure I'm going to have to do another coat, by the way, because it's just a matter of the beast. Pushed all that up and pushed it back down. It's okay, we'll dab a little more in. The smoother you get this, the less you got to take off. I'm gonna leave it right there. We'll pop back in as soon as I get the file and start filing this down and making this ridge. Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to come and just kind of hold this for a minute, just like here and there. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to take this ridge down to what seems to be where I want it. I'm hitting a little bit of metal here, which I'm not too awful worried about at this point. Find a little build up right there when I feel it when I hit it with a file. I'm trying not to go down to the metal too much around it. Like I said, this won't be the last time I have to do this either. Let's move around where the camera can see it. Step to that side just a little bit. I'm gonna call that close right there. Close enough that I probably will have to put another layer on this. You have to work this Bondo now. If you let this dry, you can forget about taking any off of this cheese grater, and you're out here with 36 grit and a flat file and having to really work the hell out of it. That's one of those things I really don't care to do. It's a lot harder to work after this stuff sets up completely. So you got a 15-minute, probably at best, time window to kind of work this with this file. You can see, I know that I'm going to be a little shallow here. So I'm going to take a little more from there. What I'm trying to do is try to see a nice oval here as I work around it. And I can definitely tell that that spot right there is going to be high. So I'm going to take it almost, you can start seeing some of that metal come out. And I don't want to go too far on that because I don't want to have to try to, I want plenty of filler to go over the top of that. So yes, I will be putting another coat on this. Probably not today, but we'll pick up where we left off. And out here on this edge, I want to just kind of start rounding this to this. And that's looking pretty good. As I look across that, we're getting close to getting this to a flat point. Still got bit right there, but I'm down to the metal. So this is going to come around to where I have to bring this rest of this ridge up a little bit. What I'll take is some 36 grit flat file paper and I'll work the inside of this while it hasn't set up completely, because it's a lot easier to shape now. I'll get it to a point where I think I'm over what I should be doing. And then we come back in with 80 grit and work it till we get it to where we want it. On that edge. Of course, I can't get in there with that file to work that out. A lot of finger work. Be a lot of sanding inside this to get this all nice and rounded out when we get it all worked out. We're getting there. There's a ridge of Bondo right there that I just can't get to. If I get to a point where I can't get it with my fingers, I'll take a die grinder bit and go in there and kind of shape it a little bit. Let's come around here. What I'm doing is coming from the center up to that ridge and just letting the paper and my hand do a lot of this work, bringing that ridge in. And we're hitting the ridge right there, so that's where I'll stop because it'll need a little more. And once I get all this shaped like I want it, then we come in and skim coat the whole thing. So, and then we work it down with 80 instead of using 36, just to try to get to a uniform situation. Then after this is all done in 80, we'll use a heavy sand and fill primer over everything to bring this all out. We're starting to see that ridge now. Which is where I need to be before we put the last layer on and work to 80. As you can see, that ridge is starting to develop itself. And then I'm not really shaping on the outside of this. What I'm doing is I'm putting 36 grit scratches in it, so that the next layer of Bondo will adhere and come in there real good and hang on to this layer, especially since I'm probably done for the day. And we want to make sure that this, when I come in the morning, it's basically ready to blow off and put the last fill layer on. Some people will put Bondo over Bondo. I really don't like, I mean, just before the Bondo is even roughed in. And I really don't feel like it adheres to the Bondo as well as it should. Some guys say it's fine, it's not gonna, you'll be fine. And I would rather go a little bit extra work on it and know that this is gonna hold together. And it gives you a little more feel on things when you're shaping it. You get a more feel for stuff. Still feel like that ridge is there. It's just not rounding over like I want yet. I'm liking the way this is coming out, nice and round. And it looks like it's almost level, maybe just a little dip right there, needs a little more right there. Final shape of this thing's coming together. We're getting there, everybody. I hope everybody can see that good. I'm starting to like the shape of that. It's starting to feel like it's all one piece of the tank there. And you can see from the top. Okay. It's Dave with Iron Blackbird Cycles. We're at it again. I need to try to level this tank where the epoxy is going to go. It needs to be completely flat, otherwise my paint lines will be off when we get to that point. And I've hit metal here and here. That's all I need to go. This now has a edge, this now has an edge. So we're gonna work this edge for a few minutes. I may have to put just a touch more Bondo right here, but we're gonna try to work this best we can to that point. Use 36 grit paper. And I'm just kind of rounding this. I don't want to really go at this real flat. I want to just make sure my hand rolls over this. So we can start getting a shape. What we don't want to go past is this flat that I've created. If we go past this flat, we'll start sinking that line, which we don't want to do. So I have to be careful not to go past that flat. This is almost like sculpting, except you're not using a chisel. You're using sandpaper. It's kind of like looking at what you're doing, coming up with a good line. I am seeing just a touch of a dip right there. So I'll get this fairly flattened out like I want it, almost around it until this side, and I can feel it. I can feel it's a little shallow right there. So we build up that area just a touch right through here. I can feel the dip right there. And that'll bring this line up to where it needs to be. And then we can finalize this side, start getting some primer on it, start sanding it with 80, and see how that goes. Right now I'm taking off Bondo that I just laid on there that I know is not going to be there in the end. This tank will start coming off before that Bondo is needed. That much less I got to do in the next piece, because now I know I'm good to that point. All I got to do is just build this area right here. So we're going to mix up a little Bondo, build that area, and we'll be back with you. So we laid that Bondo on to build this ridge up right there. In a few minutes, as soon as that's ready, I'll get the file out. We'll work that down. Okay, so we got the file out now. What I'm doing is working from the contour of the tank back to where I'm working. As you can see, I haven't even got to this part yet. I'm just kind of coming off this tank and coming up to where I'm working at. And as soon as I get to that point, that's kind of where I'll start laying out of it. Come back with a 36 grit and start working it that way. You can tell the underneath layer of that Bondo is, you know, it's more dry, so it's a little bit different color. And I don't really want to try to get all the way to that edge yet. So I'm going to get up to it. I'm going to take a piece of this 36 grit. And I'm going to work this while it's about half wet. If I let that dry, I'll be here all day sanding. So that's one thing we don't want to do. Nobody really makes a tool to get in these areas, so you just gotta kind of get that 36 grit to conform, run it different directions to try to pull it where you need it pulled to. Now we're going to try to level this again. Come grab this tank for a minute. Hold it like that. It won't take much to get that down to where it's supposed to be. What you're checking for is a flat spot all the way around this edge. Go ahead. Now my idea is we take this and we work that flat spot. Work up to it until it starts to get a little pointed. I don't want to go completely pointed with it because that's going to run a risk of breaking off. What we want to do is just start to get it to round over on the edge there. And we're pretty close on this side. When I'm running this 36 grit to just kind of rough everything in, we're looking for where the metal gradually turns into the Bondo. So you see how I'm starting to develop a line? If I don't see that line get consistent, then I know I'm digging a rut. So that's one of the things that you got to watch for when you're doing something like this. Now, another thing is this tank comes out, it's got kind of a crown right here. So it needs to, this line probably needs to dip down a little bit so that we can keep a nice round contour. And we do have this built up enough now because I've got a flat spot all the way back to where I'm hitting the metal right here and here. So that's coming out pretty good. We're level all the way around. Now here's a trick. we're filling this with epoxy, but we're not gonna let the epoxy go level. We're gonna build a clay ridge around this, and we're bringing the epoxy all the way up. And I'm gonna be taking this from this body work and shaving that epoxy in, and we're gonna round this tank with epoxy. So it will look like a regular round tank, but this outer portion and shallow area are gonna be filled with clear epoxy, and there's 58 Panhead badge going in the middle of this tank, floated in the epoxy. So what I'm doing right now has to be right, because outside of this tank where the epoxy isn't is going to be painted, and obviously I'm going to have to tape off that epoxy to paint this tank. And if this isn't exactly level, so that epoxy is level all the way around that, we're going to run into a weird line going around this eye. So we have to make sure that this is dead square level. Cool project. It's going to be fun, but it's going to be a lot of work. This is not an easy situation we're dealing with here, because everything from the prep work to painting the eye, putting in the epoxy, then doing the outer part of the tank, all has to be dead nuts on. There's no room for mistakes. So that's the kind of the situation we're living with here. And what I'm seeing is, I'm looking at this flat spot. I know it's hard for you guys to see. What I'm seeing is I am running dangerously close to this ridge right here and here, getting low on me. So I can tell that because I'm almost losing my flat spot here. I just barely got a flat spot right there. The last thing I want is to have to go in and put another layer of Bondo on this thing, because it's a lot of work taking it off. So the longer I take to get this out of center of this, the harder it gets. The harder to work. And you see what I'm doing? I've hit this metal. I don't want to hit that metal. I'm going to have to put a little filler in that, but that tells me that I've got to bring this flat back from this side. I can no longer go to this side of that flat. Looking pretty good. And we've got our edge almost all the way around. This shallow area right here I have to be careful with, because I have to take it out of just this area and not out of this area, or we're going to lose our deal. So I mean, you can do this with minimal tools. 90% of the time, I don't even use a flat file. The only reason I'm using a flat file is to make sure that this edge stays flat. We know this Bondo out here is not going to be needed. Go ahead and take it off now. And I don't mind putting these 36 grit scratches in this tank, because when we do sand and fill primer, that just makes that primer latch on as good as you can get it to latch on. Because I'll fill that with sand and fill primer. Probably with this a 2K epoxy primer, filler primer, and then we'll let that dry good, and then we'll work it. And that should bring us to that when we sand it down, it'll become slick. Yeah, we're getting a nice crown on that now. A lot of people ain't seen this kind of stuff done since the old fiberglass days, when guys were doing vets and Camaros and building up hood scoops and wings and a lot of other stuff for those old muscle cars. I don't know how much of this you can see, but it's looking pretty good. Probably won't be able to tell, but it's level now. So next step for this will be priming it, probably some 80 grit on it before we prime it, then priming it, then sanding it down with 400 or 320, and then getting all the little divots and stuff worked out in the Bondo with the primer, sand and fill primer. And once this is slick, you know, then it'll be ready to do a full prime on it. And tomorrow we'll get the video of this side being done. We're getting close on this side, and it's actually pretty level just seeing the steel around it. So one more layer around this, and this side should be done. And from the top, it's starting to look pretty decent. So tune in tomorrow. This is Dave with Iron Blackbird Cycles. Don't forget to like and subscribe.